Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another tutorial. In today's video I'll be showing you guys how to cut and sew a cropped blazer with notched collar. If this sounds good to you and it's something you're interested in, then please keep watching. Also, please give this video a thumbs up, share to your friends, and also leave a comment. And if you're coming across my channel for the very first time, you're welcome. Please don't forget to click on the subscribe button. Thank you. Now, with that being said, guys, let's just get right into this video. So first and first, we are going to be quickly drafting the pattern for the blazer. As you can see, I already have some measurements that I noted down on this paper already. So I left some space at the top of the paper and also in front of the paper. The top part is where I'll be placing the collar extension, while the front part is where I'll be placing the button extension. So to save time, I'm going to be going over this as quickly as I can. I have other videos on my channel that you guys can check on how to draft your blazer pattern, so I'm going to be linking those here. Now back to this pattern. The length of this blazer that I'm working with is going to be 18 inches from my shoulder because it's a cropped blazer, so I'm working with 18 inches. You can make yours a little bit longer than this if you want. It totally depends on your preference. Now the shoulder length I'm working with here is 16 inches divided by 2 gave me 8, so I marked that there, and then I came down to my bust point. I marked it, and I also marked my waistline right there, which is 17 inches. The width and depth of the neckline is 3.5 inches respectively, so that's just what I did right there. Now for the shoulder slope, I came down 1 inch for the shoulder slope, and I also extended the shoulder length by about half an inch just to make the shoulder a little bit longer. So I extended it outwards by half an inch. And if you want to have an exaggerated look for your blazer, you can just add about 1 inch or 1.5 inches to the normal length of your shoulder. Then you can have an exaggerated look for that. So the next thing I did was to mark my bust line right there, and then I came up 2 inches from the bust line to mark my chest line, where I placed my bust circumference divided by 4, and then I added half an inch of ease, and I also came down half an inch before I connected it to form the armhole for the blazer, as you can see. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is placing a waist dart on this blazer. Now if you want to have a princess dart on your blazer, it's totally fine, but for this particular tutorial I'll be working with a waist dart. So I'm using my nipple to nipple measurement to place my waist dart, which is 9 inches divided by 2, which gave me 4.5. So I already placed that on the bust line and also on the waistline, so I'm just going to connect those 2 points together like so. And then from the bust line, I'm going to be coming down 1 inch from that point because the dart is not getting to the bust line. And then on the waistline, I'm just going to be taking out half an inch on both sides on the waistline. And then after I'm done doing that, I'll just connect those 2 points back to form the waist dart. Now the next thing to do is to complete the side seam, and to do that I'm not going to be using the original waist measurement. I'm going to be transferring the bust measurement that I have to the waist because we want it to have a kind of a free silhouette, so it's going to be free at the waist area, so that's why I'm transferring the bust measurement to the waist. I hope you understand. So I'm just going to cross check the bust measurement that I have here, and then I'll just mark with my marker like so, and then I'll be connecting the side seam by connecting from the bust line to the waistline, just like I'm doing. And don't mind the shape of the side seam. By the time we take in the dart at the waist, it's going to come back to the original position. Now the next thing we want to mark is the break point, or where the lapel fold is going to be starting from. So I'm going to be going up 1 inch from my bust line. That is where I want the lapel fold to start from in this case. Now if you want yours to be deeper than that, you can go down a little bit from your bust line. Totally depends on your preference. Now from that point, I'm just going to come out 1 inch, which will serve as my button extension. So I'm going to be marking 1 inch all the way to the hem line like so. Then I'll just use my ruler and marker to connect this 1 inch like so all the way to where I want the break point to be. So you just go ahead and place your buttons, whether you want to or won't, totally depends on you. Now after we're done doing that, I'll go over to the high shoulder point or high neck point right there, and I'll be coming out by half an inch from that original neck width. You can see I came out half an inch. Now from that point, I'm just going to connect straight to the break point like so, and then I'll be highlighting with the marker just like that. Now the next thing we want to do is to fold this paper by the slanted line we just drew. You fold it like so. If you've watched my previous videos on blazers, you know I normally use this method. It's easier for me. So after folding, I'm just going to go ahead and trace the neckline right there with my tracing wheel. And after tracing, I'm just going to open up the paper. Then I'll use my curved ruler to redraw the neckline that I've traced to the other side of the paper like so. Now for the shape of the lapel, I'm just going to come out by 4 inches from that neck area. You can do more than 4 inches if you want, totally depends on your preference, but I came out by 4 inches for the width of the lapel. And I'll also be taking the midpoint of that 4 inches, so I'll just go ahead and mark 2 inches right there. Then I'll go ahead and connect from the tip of the lapel width straight to the break point right there where the lapel fold is starting from. I'll just connect like so. Then I'll just go ahead and further highlight this with a marker. So I'm going to be folding this paper again through that line so I can trace the shape of the lapel onto the other side of the paper. I'll also trace out the 2-inch mark at the center of the lapel shape like so. Now I'll open up the paper and use marker to redraw the traced line of the lapel at the other side of the paper so we can have like a mirror image of the two lapels, just like I'm doing. Then I'll mark the 2-inch mark at the center right there. Now from the 2-inch mark at the midpoint on the lapel right there, I'm going to be coming out by 2 inches at an angle of about 1 inch. So I'll just mark 1 inch right there just for reference, and then I'll come out by 2 inches. Now this is not a constant. You can work with whatever number you want. Totally depends on your preference, but I came out by 2 inches. So I'll just go ahead and mark that right there. Now just cross check the angle. Now I'm just going to be connecting it back into the midpoint like so. So the next thing we want to do is to draw the collar for this blazer. So I'll bring the back pattern and measure what I have at the neck right there. So whatever I have here is what I will transfer to the front to form the collar. Every other measurement we have here is the same as the one we have at the front, so there's nothing really complicated about that. So for the neck depth of the back, I came down by 1.5 inches for that. That's the only difference. Now I'm just going to measure what I have at the back neckline like so. So whatever I have here, I will go ahead and transfer to the front. But before I do that, I'm going to be coming out by 1/4 inch from the neckline of the front. Then I will connect it back into the neckline. So I came out 1/4 inch. Now from that 1/4 inch mark is where you're going to be placing your back neckline measurement. I hope you understand. So the way I place my tape measure, that's how you place it when you're transferring this measurement. So I'll just go ahead and use ruler to connect these points together, and then after I'm done doing that, I'm going to be coming out by another 1/4 inch, as you can see. So from that point again, you connect it back into the new neckline for the front with your pencil to kind of trace it into the neckline for a smooth transition. Now I'm just going to go ahead and use marker to further highlight this for better visibility. You can see me blending with my hand into the neckline, so for a smooth transition. So for the width of the collar, I'm going to be working with 3.5 inches. So I'll just go ahead and mark that right there. And then after doing that, I'll just connect with a ruler. And then I'll be refolding this paper so that I can trace the 2 inches that I marked on the midpoint of the lapel, which is also the notched part of the lapel. So I'll just go ahead and trace that, and then I'll open the paper and use marker to highlight it on the other side like so. Then I'll also be using marker to highlight the width of the collar. Then I'll just complete the shape of the collar by using the curved part of my ruler like so. So the top part of the collar right there is going to be unfold. So the next thing to do is to complete the side seam of this blazer. So I'm just going to be marking where it needs to be marked, and then I'll connect these 2 points together with my ruler and also redraw the shape of the armhole and the side seam. I'll also be highlighting all these parts with my marker. So the next thing that I'll be doing is to add 1 inch extra to the hemline of the blazer pattern. We're going to be using that to fold in the fabric later. So I'll just connect these points together with my straight ruler, and then I'll also highlight like so. So the next thing to do is to go ahead and cut these patterns. So I'm going to be starting with the front pattern. As you can see, I go ahead and cut off the excess paper, and after I'm done doing that, I'll go ahead and also cut the back pattern, as you can see. After cutting, this is what we have for both the front and back patterns along with the collar. So these are the materials needed for this blazer. So I'm making use of this crepe fabric, this interfacing, a matching thread, and also suit lining. I will also be making use of a pair of shoulder pads. Now this is totally optional. If you do not want to have shoulder pads, it's fine, but I'll be adding for this tutorial. So on the front pattern, I already went ahead to close the dart on the waistline, as you can see, because I want to use the center front of this pattern as my facing. So at the shoulder area, I took the midpoint of that shoulder measurement, and then I connected from the midpoint straight to the waist dart right there. So I'm going to be slashing through this pattern following that line, so I can use the center front part as the facing while I use the side front as the normal lining. Now before you go ahead to close the waist dart here to cut for the facing, make sure you've already used this pattern to cut on your main fabric before you go ahead to close the waist dart and use to cut the facing. I hope you understand. So I already went ahead to do that before I close the waist dart on this pattern. So this is the two-piece sleeve pattern that I'm going to be using for this tutorial. If you do not know how to draft a two-piece sleeve pattern, I have a video on that on my channel. You can go ahead and watch that before coming back to this. So I'm going to be modifying the sleeve pattern a little bit to fit into the armhole that I have on the blazer patterns for both front and back. So for the armholes of this blazer pattern, I added half an inch at the top part right there and on both patterns, so that made the armhole a little bit bigger. So that means I have to add back the half an inch I added here. Basically what I just want to do is to make sure that what I have at the sleeve pattern is going to fit into what I have on the blazer pattern. So I'm just going to be cutting through that paper around that area, then I will shift it up a little bit and add half an inch on both sides. Then I will through the lines and also cut on another paper and then join together, thereby increasing what I have at the top sleeve right there. So that's just what I'm doing here. So this is the front pattern. You can see I've divided it into two. So the center front is going to be for the facing, while the side front will be for the normal lining. So you just go ahead and cut your facing and lining, and then you add half an inch sewing allowance to the front that you're going to be using to join them together. You don't need to add any allowance to the side seam, and then you add half an inch to the armhole and also to the shoulder, and make sure that your facing and lining is 1 inch shorter than your main fabric. Also, don't forget that you are cutting two pieces each for each pattern piece. So these are the two pieces for the front bodies, and you can see I already notched the part where we are going to be having the notched collar look. So I notched that part, and I also went ahead to notch the break point where the lapel fold is going to be starting from, so you don't get confused. Then I went ahead to cut the exact same thing for the interfacing that I'm going to be attaching to the wrong side of these front bodies, and I will iron it to the wrong side. Now let me just set this aside. Now this is the facing for the center front. You can see that I use the same material for the facing for the center front part. Now the side piece is where I use the normal lining. You can see, so you're going to be attaching these two together with your sewing allowance of half an inch here that I indicated, and you make sure that this facing is 1 inch shorter than your main fabric. It's very important for you to be shorter than that. Now let me put this aside. Now this is the back piece. We have two pieces here for the back, as you can see, and I also went ahead to cut the interfacing, the corresponding interfacing that I'm going to be attaching or ironing to the wrong side of these pieces. And I also have the corresponding lining pieces for the back, as you can see, and I also made sure that the linings are 1 inch shorter than the main fabric. Very important. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to demonstrate how you are going to be placing your interfacing on the wrong side. So I'm using the back pieces for example. So I'm going to be placing the interfacing on the wrong side like so, then you iron on it. Then for the front pieces, I'm also going to be placing it wrong side facing me. Then I'll be adding the part that gums to the wrong side like so. So you place it on it like this, and then you go ahead and iron on top of the wrong side for both front and back. So after ironing Airstay to the wrong side of all the pieces, this is what we have. The next thing we want to do is to place our waist dart on both front and back. So I'll be using my nipple to nipple measurement to locate where to place the dart. So you can use your pattern piece to also transfer the dart onto your mini fabric. So I'll just go ahead and do this for both the front and back pieces. The next thing to do is to join the facing to the lining for the front bodies. So I'll just take one piece of the lining and place on one piece of the facing, right sides facing each other as you can see, and then I'll just go ahead and sew with the half an inch sewing allowance that I left there. So you go ahead and join the lining and facing together like so. When you are done with this side, then you move to the other side and also join these two pieces together. So this is what we have after joining the facing to the lining for the two sides of the front bodies. So you make sure to open the seams and give it a nice press with your iron. So for the back linings, you go ahead and add your waist dart to the linings just like you did for the main fabric. Remember, everything you do to the main fabric, you have to repeat on the linings as well. So after giving the facings a good press with the iron, this is what we have. So the next thing to do now is to join the two pieces of the main fabric for the back. You place them right sides facing each other, and then you'll be joining them at the center back with half an inch sewing allowance from the top to the bottom like so. Now very quickly, I'm going to be modifying the back pattern around the shoulder area, because if you look closely you will see that the shoulder for the front pattern is slightly shorter than that of the back pattern. This is because we removed a quarter of an inch extra from the neckline when we were drafting the collar for the front pattern. So I'm going to be rectifying this by also removing a quarter of an inch from the shoulder of the back so that the shoulders can rhyme, because if you do not do this, the shoulder for the back is going to be longer than the front, and it's going to cause you a lot of headache when you are joining the shoulders together. So I'm just going to be removing a quarter of an inch from the shoulder, then I'll blend it in into the neckline so that these shoulders can align together. So I'll go ahead and do that on the pattern, then I will also rectify it on the main fabric. So after rectifying it on the main fabric, this is what we have. You can see that the shoulders for the back piece and also the front is the same now. I've rectified it by trimming off a quarter of an inch and blending it into the neckline for a smooth transition. And you can also see that after joining the back piece together, I ironed the seam flat. So the next thing we will do now is to place the front pieces on top of the back, right sides facing each other like this. Then I'll be joining from the shoulder with half an inch sewing allowance. The two shoulders, you join them together, and after you're done doing that, you just go ahead and join by the side seam with your body measurements. Then you also bring the lining pieces forward and join at the center back, right sides facing each other. So after joining the front and back together, this is what we have. And you should also make sure to open the seams at the shoulder and iron them flat. It's very important. In doing so, the shoulders are going to lay flat and nice and not look bulky. And just to beautify this blazer, I'm going to be having a false welt pocket attached to the left hand side of this blazer, and I'm going to be doing that off camera. The next thing that I did was to cut the two-piece sleeve for this blazer, and I cut the top sleeve and also the under sleeve and added 2 inches extra for folding at the hemline. And I also went ahead to cut another pair for the second sleeve. And I also went ahead to cut the two pieces for the collar, which will serve as the main fabric and also the lining. And I'll be ironing Airstay or interfacing to the one I'm using for the main fabric. So after attaching the interfacing to the one I'm using for the main fabric, this is what we have. If you check the collar, you will see that there's a curved part of this collar. This is where you're going to be placing on the neckline of the blazer. So you place the center of the collar to the center back of the blazer, right sides facing each other, and then you'll be joining from that point all around. So you make sure that the notch on your collar also fits the notch at the lapel at the front. So I'm just re-notching all these parts to make them more pronounced. So I'll also be notching on the collar as well where it needs to be notched. So you go ahead and do that so that when you're joining the collar to the blazer, you know where the notches are ending and where they are starting, so it will make your work easier. So I'm just going to be using pins to hold the collar to the neckline, and then I'll be joining from the front to the center back, and then from the center back to the other side of the front. And you really have to take your time with this. So after joining the collar to the blazer, this is what we have, and I'm going to notch all around that joining part as well. And I also went ahead to fix a false welt pocket at the left hand side. As you can see, if you want me to make a tutorial on how to make a welt pocket, please let me know in the comment section. I also went ahead to cut all the pieces we'll be needing for the sleeve for the blazer. So I have a pair for the top sleeve and also a pair for the under sleeve, and you have to notch some important places here like the elbow or the underarm. You also have to note where the front of the sleeve is facing and the back is facing by checking where the sleeve is bending towards. So I'll just take one piece of the top sleeve like so, right side is facing me, and then I'll indicate where the back or the front of the sleeve is. Very important, you know that. Then I'll take the corresponding under sleeve, right sides facing each other. I'll place it on top like so, making sure that the back is facing the back and the front is facing the front of the sleeve. Now I'm just going to be joining the two sides with half an inch stitching allowance, and I'll also repeat the same process for the second sleeve. So these are the sleeves after joining. I also went ahead to give them a good press with the iron so they can lay flat and neat. Now for this particular type of sleeve, it's very important for you to note where the front is facing and where the back is facing. Now the bent part of the sleeve is going to be your back, that is where it's bending outwards will be the back of the sleeve, while the other side will be the front of the sleeve. This will help you in knowing which sleeve to fix into which armhole for your outfit. So for the left hand side of my blazer, I'm just going to take the corresponding sleeve that is going to be fixed into the armhole just by looking at where the back is bending towards. For this particular sleeve, you'll be able to know where to fix, if it's on the left hand side or the right hand side of the armhole. So I'm just going to place it right sides facing each other, starting from the shoulder joining, and then I'll pin it all around and attach my sleeve. Very simple. Then you repeat the same process for the other armhole as well. Now after fixing in our sleeves, this is what we have. I'm just trying to arrange it here so you guys can see. Now the next thing we want to do is to go ahead and also repeat the same process for the linings. So I'm just going to be bringing the two pieces for the back lining right sides facing each other, and I'm going to place them on top of one another like so and join at the center back, but I'm not going to be closing it all the way. I'm going to be leaving an opening of about 2.5 inches that I'm going to be using to turn the blazer inside out. So after joining the lining, this is what we have. I also went ahead to give it a good press. So the next thing to do is to join the linings for both front and back together. So you place them right sides facing each other like so, and then you be joining half an inch at the shoulder, and then you also be joining by your body measurement at the side seam. So after joining the linings together, this is what we have. The next step to take now is to insert the collar to the neckline. So you go ahead and insert your collar just the same way we did for the main fabric, and you note your notches, where your notches are starting and stopping. That will be a guideline for you, so you go ahead and do that. It can be tricky, but just take your time, you're going to get it. So after attaching the collar, this is what we have. I also went ahead to notch the joining because the collar has some kind of curved edges, so you need to notch that so they can stay relaxed and lay flat. The next thing to do is to join the linings for the sleeve. The same thing we did for the main fabric is just what you're going to be doing here. Note the front and the back of the sleeve for both top sleeve and under sleeve. Then you just place them on top of each other, right sides facing each other, making sure the back is facing the back, the front is facing the front, and then you join with half an inch on both sides. And I made the lining 2 inches shorter than the main fabric. Now we just go ahead and fix the sleeves into the armhole, and you have to look closely where the elbow is bending towards so you can know the front and the back of the sleeves before you attach into the armholes. So after fixing in the sleeves into the armhole, this is what we have. The next thing to do is to go ahead to add shoulder pads to the main outfit. Now this is totally optional. If you do not want to add, it's totally fine, but I just want to give mine an elevated look. So I'll be placing it at the center of the joining, the shoulder joining right there. You place it on top of it, and then I'll be tacking all around the top arm like so. I'll just tack it around. Then the excess, if there's any excess there, I'm going to trim it off if I don't want it to poke out of the neckline. So I'll just do that. Then I'll also be repeating the same process for the other armhole as well. And this is it after attaching the shoulder pads. Let me just show you the inside. Now the next thing to do is to cover up the whole outfit with lining. So I'm going to be placing the lining on top of it, right sides facing each other like so. So we are going to be joining the hemline first. So you'll be joining with half an inch sewing allowance that you left there. So I'm going to be pinning it from the beginning to the end of the hemline. I'll pin it down, and then I'll be attaching the two together with half an inch sewing allowance. You tuck the sleeves in, and then you also be attaching the lining for the collar and the main fabric for the collar. You attach it. You also be attaching the center front up until you get to the hemline. You'll be repeating the same process for the other side. You tuck the sleeves in, and then you just join with half an inch sewing allowance all around it. Now, as you can see, I've already joined it at the hemline. Now the next thing we want to do is to join the center front of the blazer. So you match the lapels together, you also match the collars together, this lining and also the main fabric, and you sew it half an inch sewing allowance. Now because the lining that we cut for this blazer was 1 inch shorter than the main fabric, so automatically the hemline is going to be pushed forward, as you can see. Now all you have to do is just follow what you have there and stitch the center front. Then you also stitch the collar, and then you repeat the same process for the other side as well. Now after attaching the lining to the fabric, this is what we have. The next thing to do is to attach or join the lining for the sleeve and the main sleeve together. So I'm just putting my hand into the sleeve right now to make sure that we have the same direction for the lining and also the fabric, the main fabric. So you make sure the joinings are facing each other. Now after that, I'm going to put my hand into the opening I left at the center back and pull out the main fabric of the sleeve and also the lining. Just watch what I'm doing. So you place them in front of each other, making sure that they are facing the same direction. The joinings at the sides are also facing the joinings at the side for both lining and fabric. Then you'll be attaching them together with half an inch sewing allowance all around like so. You can pin it all around before you attach with half an inch sewing allowance. So after I was done attaching, this is what I have. You can see the way I did it. Now I'm just going to put my hand into the armhole and pull everything out. That way the lining is also pulled with the main fabric, and they are joined together like so, as you can see. Now I will just go ahead and also repeat the same process for the other side of the armhole. So after I was done doing that, this is what I have. You can see how everything is closed and covered up, and you can see the sleeve everything is also covered up, looking nice. So the next thing to do is to cover up the opening at the center back right there. You cover it up, or you can even leave it if you want, totally depends on you. And then I'll be giving it a good press. Then after that, I'll be placing buttonholes on the right hand side of the blazer. I'll be placing one slightly below the break point and 4 inches in between before I place another buttonhole and the corresponding buttons. And so this is the finished look, guys. I gave it a very good press, and I also attached the buttons and the buttonholes, and so we are done. This is everything about a cropped blazer, how to make one. So on this note, guys, we've come to the end of today's video. If you found it really helpful, please give me a giant thumbs up, share this video to your friends, and if you're coming across my channel for the first time, don't forget to click on the subscribe button, leave a comment, and also don't forget to turn on your notification bell to get notified whenever I upload new videos. So till I see you in my next one, guys, bye.